Okay. Now let's see here. Are we apparent? Okay. So for some reason on the CFA channel, I can't have control over when my stream starts. I can only auto start the stream. So, hello everybody. Welcome back to the dumpster fire that is Captain America: The First Avenger by Elizabeth Rudnick. Returning from yesterday, Kevin, your audio is all the way down. Let me readjust that for you. Say something.
Something.
Say something else.
Something else.
Okay, you need to adjust your audio because I can't hear you.
How can I...
Like, adjust your microphone gain or something like that. Because I boosted you to like 200% and I still couldn't hear you.
One sec, hold on. I can hear you guys, but for some reason you say that that you can't hear me.
I can hear you a little bit.
I can't boost up. Let me go and do...
Anyways, I'm just gonna go ahead and introduce the show today. So, Spavy is not able to join us because she's having some dental issues. She recently got some wisdom teeth removed, or a wisdom tooth removed, and it's still affecting her. It wasn't affecting her much yesterday, apparently. Hey, but it's flared up, so we're gonna be doing this by ourselves. Although, I am going to be letting her choose the next thing that we riff, and I'm going to ask that she choose a Christmas themed thing.
Okay. Hey, could we riff on Kiss Save Santa?
Maybe that can be the follow-up to whatever Spavy wants to riff.
Yes. So,
I thought
one thing before we get started, I showed Alex a bit from comic artist Piccolo, who drew. Hold on a sec. I need to link I need to share the tweet on here. So it's in critique of art. Okay, so Beast Boy has adopted Goth Duck.
He has embraced it.
He has embraced the life of humoring Raven's lifestyle. At least
You know what? I like it.
Alex hates this art.
I don't actually hate it.
Piccolo. I'm sorry, I'm not over the fact that his name is Gabriel Piccolo.
That is an actual name. Also, Gallon Dune is apparently the name of a song. I thought it was a name that I made up.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's like, I just, like, smashed the keyboard until I found something that sounded cool. And, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do with names. I try my best to.
Yeah, like Once Upon a Time. And I'm still not over... I'm not over two snowmen brawling in the streets. Though it looks like they're doing something else.
Bow, bow. Oh, yeah. Anyways.
chapter 300 of 12.
Chapter 8. Oh yeah, do y'all have any unfinished business from our last session that you want to address?
Any unfinished business? Yeah, the story sucks.
Here's my unfinished business. People like her should not be writing stories.
Okay, anyways. Chapter 8. And so later that night, Steve found himself inside the belly of a giant silver Lockheed Electra jet. On the bench across from him, Peggy Carter sat going over the details of a seemingly impossible mission. Dun 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 dun. Fun fact, the original choice for Tony Stark was actually Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I know that.
That would have been a bit of a...
Can't catch me, gay thoughts. I'm never coming out.
You ain't ever gonna catch me. Forget about it. See y'all next year.
In the cockpit, Howard Stark checked dials and instrument readings as he flew the plane further and further into enemy territory. He was the only pilot Peggy could find crazy enough to fly into enemy territory, and who didn't have to answer to Colonel Phillips. Excuse me, what the fuck?
I don't get it. What is going?
Why are you choosing this stuff? Actually, hang on. I should probably share the stream link in the server.
Chapter 5. Steve fucks a duck. Sorry. Okay, Dylan.
Yes.
If you had to pick between finding the Rainbow Connection and finding the cure for cancer, what would you...
Finding the Rainbow Connection or finding the cure for cancer?
Okay, Alex, same question.
I'd say it's the same thing. Trick question.
So how is that a trick question?
Because the Rainbow Connection is the cure for cancer.
How? That.
Seriously, dude, how are you this quiet? I have you boosted to 200%.
I don't know how either.
Are you like a mile away from your mic or something?
No, I'm practically kissing it.
Okay, now I can hear you. What the fuck? Okay. Only Peggy and Stark knew what Steve was up to, and Steve shuddered at the thought of Phillips finding out. If discovered, he would surely be court-martialed and discharged from the army. But Steve wasn't about to just keep sitting around. Steve wasn't about to just keep sitting around. That's not proper grammar.
Sorry. Okay, so as it turns out,
okay. I'm gonna show you this right here. Steve wasn't about to just keep sitting around. This is actually in the book.
Why?
I don't fucking know. He had seen the map, he had super strength, all one word, and if he failed, Phillips would probably be happy to have Captain America out of his hair. Steve just wished Peggy hadn't put herself on the line for him. If I don't make it back, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, he said quietly, his voice just loud enough to carry above the whine of the engines.
Does this book not have any editors?
Let me see.
Evidently, no, they don't.
There is no editor listed.
Well, that explains it right there. It would have been worse if there was an editor.
Oh my god, there is literally no editor listed on this. Holy shit.
I'll be
I
right
don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's worse. The fact that what would be worse, it having an editor or it not having an editor, and it turned out like this.
I mean, we know Disney's level of quality control from The Last Jedi, so
True.
I guess this is just an indicator for that their problems started a hell of a lot earlier than we really thought.
Yeah. Now it just bled into the movies.
He said quietly, his voice just loud enough to carry above the whine of the engines. Peggy didn't say it, but Steve was worth the risk. After all, she'd seen him try harder than anyone else back at Camp Leahy, even when the odds were stacked against him. Yeah, it's a goddamn shame we didn't see that.
Right.
And now his best friend was presumed dead, missing comma, and others had been captured. Of course Peggy would help. She only wished he didn't have to do it all on his own. Turning around, well, he doesn't. You could join him. Turning around in his seat, Stark smiled his charming smile. Unlike Steve and Peggy, he didn't seem bothered by the late-night stealth mission. In fact, he looked more confident and charming than usual. After we dropped Steve off, he said, focusing his handsome grin on Peggy, I thought you and I could stop in Lucerne for late-night fondue. For late-night fondue. He'd rushed to Peggy's cheeks as Steve raised an eyebrow. Why is he saying fondue like that? He asked. What is fondue, anyway? I don't like it. Peggy grinned at the obvious jealousy in Steve's voice. Stark's the best civilian pilot I've ever seen. Oh, we just lost Kevin. And Kevin's back. Hi, Kevin.
I'm sorry, my mic ended up just tapping out. Oh, for a bit.
Oh, like my voice last night.
Well, anyway, I'm gonna probably be getting dinner for a bit, so I'll be gone on for a little while.
Yeah, just, like, listen to us over the phone, and like, if you have any comments, then just butt in, you know?
I will. Though my dad
All right.
what to get for dinner since we're all getting place.
And mad enough to brave this airspace. We're lucky to have him. Have him? Steve repeated, causing Peggy to grin even more. Are you two? No, he was cut off by the sudden sound of gunfire. The plane lurched to the left as more guns hammered at its side. They were close to the drop zone, and Hydra didn't want them there. I don't think it's Hydra who doesn't want you there. You are fighting the Nazis.
Yeah.
Granted, the Nazis and Hydra aren't exactly close at this point in time, but Hydra is working within Nazi territory. The Nazis are shooting at you.
Yes.
You fucking idiot.
Indeed.
Pulling on his parachute, Steve opened the jump door. The plane tilted left and then right as Stark, excuse me, executed evasion maneuvers. Still, the side of the plane was getting pummeled with bullets. No, it was getting pummeled with flak from shells, not bullets. Steve had to get out of there now before they all went down. Once I'm clear, turn this thing around, he said, looking at Peggy. And get out of here. You can't give me orders, as Peggy shouted over the howling wind. Steve just smiled. Yes, I can. I'm a captain. And then, before she could say anything else, Steve jumped, disappearing from view. Line break.
I think
Exploded by jumping off the plane and he gets out unscathed. He's like, "Sorry, happened."
at least my bad Naruto fan fictions actually had decent grammar.
Yes. Yes, it did.
Yeah. And mind you, I was like 13 when I wrote those.
The The air rushed by, whipping Steve's hair. He's wearing a helmet and a cowl underneath said helmet, and pulling at his clothes. Somewhere above him, he was vaguely aware that Stark had turned the plane around. How would he be aware of that? And was heading towards safer airspace. The guns went quiet, and Steve breathed a sigh of relief. Peggy and Stark would be okay. Pulling his chute, Steve was momentarily jerked up as the wind caught the fabric and slowed him down, as is normal for a parachute. When he felt steady, Steve looked down, trying to see if he could spot a clear landing place. But the only thing he could see was the flash of gunfire as bullets flew through the air. I thought the bullets stopped. Pulling on the cord, Steve tried to steer the unwieldy chute away from the enemy fire, but it was no use. Bullets ripped through the chute, and Steve began falling faster and faster. Luckily, he had made it pretty close to the ground before the shooting started, and now the forest was only about 20 feet below. Unhooking himself, Steve used his shield to brace for impact as he plummeted to the ground. Crashing through the trees as they ripped at his clothes and scratched his face, Steve landed with a thud. The gunfire stopped as the enemy decided he'd never survive the fall. He was alive and behind enemy lines, mere miles from the Hydra base. It was time to go save some soldiers. Line break. Moments later, Steve found himself outside the main gates at the Hydra factory. It was just where Peggy said it would be. It was also just as heavily guarded as she had warned. Searchlights swept from several watchtowers along the perimeter, while thick barbed wire sat atop the wall surrounding the compound. Steve could make out the main factory building, which was billowing smoke, while double space, no comma in between. What the fuck, guys? While heavily armed Hydra troopers marched back and forth across the grounds. Steve needed a plan, and you didn't come up with one before now. Clearly, he wasn't going to be able to just waltz right in there and ask for the prisoners back. Yeah, no shit. The dark was suddenly illuminated by headlights as a convoy of 3 trucks... Does that really count as a convoy? Pulled up to the gate. This was his break. As the driver of the first truck stopped to clear his entrance with the guard, Steve snuck over to the last vehicle. I don't think snuck is a word. I'm pretty sure it's sneaked.
No, I think it's snuck.
Okay,
Like,
snuck is a word. It's just
Yeah,
some spell checkers don't register it as such.
yeah, snuck.
Google Dictionary says that it's a word, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah, example, like I snuck into blah 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 blah. I'm just waiting to hear period, quotation mark, comma. I'm just waiting for it. But the double spaces will have to do for now.
Yeah, the double space, there's no punctuation and missing fucking words and shit are that.
That's just
This book's
this
a
whole
one of that.
this whole thing is just sad.
Sorry about that. I had to order dinner, so I'll be gone within like 10 minutes.
Yep. That's alright, man. Steve snuck over to the last vehicle and, making sure no one saw him, jumped inside and hid underneath a tarp. Completely editing out the fact that he found 2 guys inside and punched them out. A moment later, the truck started up again and drove through the gate. Steve was in. When he was sure that the coast was clear, Steve got out and slipped into the shadows.
Ninja.
Weapons and equipment, OSP. Yeah, this is Snake. I'm in.
trying to get in, but I'm dummy thin. Clap guard.
Yeah. Although, funny thing, Chris Evans was actually the first choice of a lot of people to play Solid Snake, and then Oscar Isaacs is cast as Snake. I mean, that's good casting, but damn, I didn't expect that.
Wait. So is that who they got?
Yeah, Oscar Isaacs is playing Solid Snake in the Metal Gear movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Now that he was in the compound, he could make out more buildings and even more troopers, and now we have a bunch of color photos from the movie depicting scenes not in this book, such as the fact that the interior of the exam facility was brightly lit. The exterior was dark. And we have a scene depicting Johann Schmidt getting the Tesseract, which is not named as such. Then we have promotional pictures of Chris Evans and what's his fucking name, Hugo Weaving, as Captain America and Red Skull, respectively, with no real explanation as to why Schmidt is the Red Skull. Also, this comes before the reveal of Schmidt as the Red Skull in the book, so yeah. And we have Captain America stage act, not as it was described in the book so far. Various things here. Oh my god, this... Okay, I'm gonna come to this later. His eyes grew wide when he saw two Hydra goons leading a long line of prisoners across the compound. Steve followed them to one of the barracks. As one of the guards brought the prisoners inside, the other stood at the door on watch. With one swift move, Steve took him out using a powerful roundhouse kick. Then he silently slipped into the prison. I thought he broke the guy's neck. What the fuck? Maybe I'm getting confused now, but like, this is not how I remember it. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the dark, it was dark outside. What the fuck? They were making a nighttime approach. Steve's mouth dropped open in terror. The barracks were something out of a nightmare. Dozens of circular cages filled the space, and each one overflowed with prisoners. There had to be hundreds of them. That meant Hydra had captured more than just the 107th, Steve realized. Yeah, no shit. This is what the Nazis were doing all over Europe, dumbass. Part of the reason why you joined in the first place. He'd have to let Phillips know, but first he needed to get them out. Yeah, you can let Phillips know when you bring all these guys back to his office. First he needed to get them out. There was a raised platform above the cages, and a guard was pacing back and forth on it. Quietly, Steve made his way up, and then, crack, with a swift punch he knocked out the guard, who then dropped off the platform and onto the cages below. The prisoners looked up, confused. Yes, because, heaven forbid, in this book where we depict a guy committing suicide with a cyanide capsule embedded in his tooth, we show our hero killing enemy combatants who are actual literal fucking Nazis.
Indeed.
Disney, what the fuck is going on here? It's like, what's gonna happen next? Like, are they gonna have the fucking Iron Man novelization and having him, like, non-lethally subduing the fucking Ten Rings terrorists? Like, no, own up to the fact that the hero who is actually, killing these motherfuckers because they're in combat and it's a war! This whole thing is about war! Like a Star Wars book that shies away from the war. One of the men, a soldier by the name of Jones, watched as Steve stepped out of the shadows. He took in his helmet and shield. "Who are you supposed to be?" he asked. "I'm Captain America," Steve answered, ignoring the groans that went up from the cages. He knew they had a right to doubt him, but he'd prove them wrong. Why is there a period there? That's supposed to be a comma. Grabbing the key off the unconscious guard, he raced down the line of cages, opening each one. Dozens of men spilled out, shaking their numb limbs and stretching their sore muscles. Are there any others? Steve asked when everyone was out. The isolation ward. A British soldier named Dum Dum Dugan answered on the factory floor, Dugan is American! That's not even... Dum Dum Dugan is American. He's played by an American using an American accent in the American movie. America, fuck yeah!
Coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah.
This book frustrates me.
That too.
You got the nationality, of one of the one of the major supporting characters wrong. Like, all you have to do is listen to Neil McDonough's voice in, like, one fucking clip. He's in the damn trailers that were already out by, like, the time this book was published. What the hell? Hang on. Hang the fuck on. Google. Dum Dum Dugan. Also, why would Steve know that he was British, and why would Steve know what his name was? Why would Steve even know what his name was? Okay. Timothy Aloysius Cadwallader Dugan. That is a long fucking name. Yeah, he's from fucking Boston in the comics. He's from Boston in the comics. Like, he was originally portrayed as British in Sergeant Fury #1, but everything afterwards has had him from Boston. He's from Boston. Did you, like, look at the Wikipedia article and only just see, oh, he was from England in his first appearance. Okay, that means he's from England. And no, Dum Dum Dugan is from Boston. He... Fuck. Critical research failure. Critical fucking research failure. Holy shit. Like, at least they got the name of our hero correct. They like, barely got Bucky's name correct. A British soldier named Dum Dum Dugan answered. Why would he even know his name? Dugan wasn't wearing anything with his fucking name on it. Steve nodded. That was where we'd go next. Leaving the others to find weapons. That is a recipe for getting those men killed, Steve. And a way to distract the remaining guards. That is a recipe for getting them killed, Steve. Steve made his way to the factory. The Hydra troops hadn't noticed that they were under attack yet, but they soon would, or they would soon, and Steve still had men to rescue. Staying in the shadows, he ducked past trooper after trooper until he finally made it to the front door. Using his red, white, and blue shield as an offensive weapon... Yes, that's actually one of the purposes of a shield. Like, people think, these days, people think of shields as being purely defensive, but no, they've been used as a part of the offensive kit since their very inception, guys. No duh. He smashed 2 Hydra guards in the face, knocking them out so he could make his way inside.
I'm gonna go get dinner. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you do that, buddy. You're gonna be better off than we are. The factory floor was covered in weapons of war. Probably because there's a war on. Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. There were hundreds of crates full of complete bombs, and other crates with what looked like unfinished bombs. Inside even more crates, clusters of cartridges lay nestled in straw. Stepping closer, Steve noticed that the bombs and cartridges emitted a strange blue glow. Strange blue glow. That's my dyslexia, not the author's. I have to make sure, because if I don't note this, people will actually think that that's how it is in the book. Because why wouldn't they at this point? Just like the Super Soldier serum. Super Soldier is now 2 words and is hyphenated at this time. Pocketing one cartridge, he reminded himself to brief Phillips on this when, or rather if, he got back to the base. Steve then cautiously continued through the bomb-making factory, heading towards the offices at the other end of the hangar. But, unbeknownst to Steve, the factory wasn't just another Hydra base, but it was also Johann Schmidt's current headquarters, and he was watching everything Steve did over a closed-circuit camera. The Hydra leader heard a loud explosion outside and turned to look at another monitor that revealed 4 prisoners blasting a hole in the factory wall. As the alarm blared and guards rushed out, Schmidt turned his attention back to the image of Steve. He watched as he punched and kicked his way past dozens of guards, getting closer and closer to Schmidt's office. It was an impressive, if annoying, sight. "Doctor," Schmidt said, turning to his lead scientist, who has no name for some reason. "Prepare to evacuate." The Hydra scientist nervously eyed the camera, shifting between the action outside and the action inside the factory walls. "I'm sure our forces can handle," he began. "Our forces are outmatched," Schmidt snarled. "By one man." "No, Schmidt, it's not just one man. He kinda freed the prisoners who were also fighting with him." "You idiot."
Yeah.
Looking down at the equipment panel in front of him, Schmidt flipped a switch and a countdown clock lit up. Then he slipped out the door and down the long corridor. Steve had just made it into the corridor when he saw the scientist retreat and heard the door to the lab close. He didn't know who the man was, but by the way he kept glancing back at the door, Steve figured something important was in there. When the other man was out of sight, Steve slipped inside and shut the door behind him. The lab was full of files and paperwork. Specimen jars lined shelves, and various monitors beeped. In the middle of the room, a large cage sat atop a rusty drain, and inside the cage, Steve saw the back of a man who was slumped on the ground. Hearing footsteps, the man spoke up, his voice scratchy. "Barnes, James Buchanan, Sergeant," he said. Steve paused in mid-step. It couldn't be. "Bucky?" he said softly. There was a moment of silence, and then, Who was that?" Steve raced over and crouched down in front of the cage. It wasn't a cage. He was strapped up to a fucking chair. Like sort of a... it wasn't exactly a chair, but it was a, it was some kind of apparatus. He wasn't in a fucking cage. That's the point.
Right.
Bucky was inside. He was beaten and grizzled, but he was alive. With one mighty swing, Steve smashed the lock. Then he held out his hand. "It's me, Buck." "Steve?" Bucky asked, taking in his old friend's new look. "I thought you were dead," Steve said. "I thought you were smaller," Bucky replied as Steve hauled him to his feet and helped him out of the cage. When they were both standing, Bucky stared up at his friend, his eyes disbelieving. This wasn't the Steve he knew. This Steve was bigger, faster, and stronger than the scrawny kid Bucky grew up with in Brooklyn. And now, in a startling turn of events, Steve was about to say, "Bucky, yeah, thank you for laying that out for us guys."
It's just like there's just this unnecessary amount of fluff.
There's fluff where it doesn't need to be. There's a lack of detail where it's necessary. "What happened to you?" Bucky finally asked. "I joined the army," Steve answered matter-of-factly. Suddenly, a blast rocked the room. One of the machines on the factory floor was triggered to explode, and it sent Steve and Bucky hurtling. They would have to catch up later. Right now, they had to get out of there. Putting an arm around Bucky, Steve began to lead him from the room. Out of the corner of his eye, Steve spotted a map on one of the walls. He paused, noticing that it was covered in Hydra symbols that spread all across Europe. He took a mental picture of the map. Okay. And then, as another explosion rocked the facility, moved back into the hall with Bucky. All around them, bombs continued to go off, shaking the foundation of the factory and making it hard to move quickly. As they made their way down the corridor, Bucky continued trying to get answers. He figured Steve must have undergone some kind of treatment or been in an experiment, which we already saw earlier in the fucking book, you dumbass, so you don't need to explain that.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way.
There was no way he could have naturally changed into the man who stood next to him. Yes, thank you for that brilliant observation, Captain Obvious. Did it hurt, he asked. A little bit, Steve answered, dodging a piece of ceiling as it crashed to the ground. Is it permanent? So far, Steve said. They had reached a stairwell that led either up to a catwalk or down, back toward the factory floor. Steve started to lead them down when another series of explosions ripped through the building. A chunk of wall fell onto the stairs, blocking their way. It looked as if they were going to have to head up. Dragging the still weak Bucky, Steve got them up onto the catwalk. Outside, he heard shouts as the escaping prisoners fought against... Excuse me. Outside, he heard shouts as the escaping prisoners fought against the Hydra soldiers, sorry. More bombs went off, making Steve's ears ring. When the smoke cleared, he noticed that someone was blocking their way. Captain America. How exciting, Johann Schmidt said, a sneer on his face. In his hand, he held what looked like a titanium box. I'm a fan of your films, he went on. Now, what's something that they omitted from this book? I don't know if you remember this, but they omitted something, a key fact from this book.
Introducing him?
Not just that.
Huh.
Give you a hint.
I don't know. They omitted quite a bit.
It has something to do with what Schmidt just said.
I've seen your films.
Bingo. Now, think about it.
Didn't he have, like, no idea who he was in the movie?
No, he actually did watch his films, but here's the thing. Captain America didn't make any propaganda movies in this book.
Oh, shit. I wasn't thinking about the book.
All they did was take a film of his stage performance. They didn't mention the propaganda movies that he shot, which he did in the movie, but didn't in this.
Wow.
Yeah. He can't be a fan of his films if the films don't exist. Also, I'm going to look up what that line was in the script. Okay, so it is that exact line. That's good. He went on. He handed the box to the man in the lab coat Steve had seen earlier. Then Schmidt moved forward. Steve took a step forward as well. So, the old man managed it after all. Not quite an improvement, but impressive. Anger filled Steve as Schmidt spoke. With a cry of rage, he pulled back his arm and punched Schmidt as hard as he could. The Hydra leader went stumbling backward. You've got no idea what you're talking about, Steve said. A smile played over Schmidt's face, and he looked almost pleased by Steve's reaction. Don't I? He asked. Then he swung. Thinking quickly, Steve threw up his mighty shield, blocking the punch. When he lowered the shield, there was a fist-sized dent in it. Oh,
I don't even think Tariq Nasheed messed things up this bad.
Yeah. Steve looked up, confused. A moment later, Schmidt hit him, knocking him to the ground. Erskine said your experiment was a failure, Steve said, trying to catch his breath. He kicked his legs, driving his feet hard into Schmidt's jaw. Seeing his leader on the ground, the Hydra scientist raced over to the catwalk controls. Flipping a switch, the sides began to retract, creating a gap between the fighting men. Meanwhile, Steve and Schmidt had gotten back to their feet. When Steve looked over at the Hydra leader, his jaw dropped. It looked as if Schmidt's face was on crooked. Red muscle seemed to bulge out of torn seams in Schmidt's head, as if his sinister self could no longer be contained by human skin. "A failure," Schmidt said. "Oh no, Captain. I was his greatest success." Then, with an evil grin, Schmidt reached up and pulled off his face. Underneath, there was nothing but a gruesome red skull.
Get it?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Red Letter Media calls a coupon shot. You know, something that should be dwelled on a little bit and shown in a certain light so that it's presented well, but isn't. It's a coupon shot. Thank you, Rich Evans. Thank you, Rich Evans. As Steve and Bucky gaped at the horrific sight, Schmidt let out a diabolical laugh. Then turning, he slipped into a nearby elevator. A moment later, the door slammed shut. Schmidt had escaped, but Steve and Bucky were trapped. Another series of explosions rocked the building, and a catwalk shuddered beneath Steve and Bucky. There was no time to worry about the Hydra leader now. They had to get out of there, or they were going to end up falling to their deaths. Before Bucky could protest, Steve picked him up and threw him across the gap between the two sides of the catwalk. He was about to follow when boom, boom, boom! Boom, 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 boom. Anyways. More explosions caused the catwalk to split even wider. Steve was left stranded on one side while Bucky waited for him on the other. "Just get out," Steve shouted to his friend. "Not without you," Bucky shouted back as the roof began to collapse. Steve looked around. The only way out was on the other side of the catwalk. He raced back as far as he could to give himself a running start and then took off. He was going to jump. He ran faster and faster. When he reached the edge, he gave himself one last push and leaped, just as the biggest bomb went off. Bucky watched in horror as Steve disappeared into the flames. And Chapter 8, thoughts so far?
You're right when you said it's only gonna get worse.
Yes, indeedy doodly.
Yeah, just I'm at a loss for words. And just how absurdly, how not only do they omit stuff from the movies, they add in details that were in the movies later in the book, but that makes there's just so many continuity errors. Like, I honestly just, this is how the books are. It was no wonder that the comics started to reflect this.
Yeah. Also, this is roughly around the time that Marvel's comics started getting to be absolutely intolerable as opposed to just mostly intolerable. So, yeah. Colonel Phillips sat in front of his typewriter, his fingers hesitating over the keys. Taking a deep breath, he continued his note. Senator Brandt, regret to report Captain Steve Rogers, KIA. He stopped typing as Peggy Carter came to the door. She looked tired and sad. In her hand, she held aerial photographs of the destroyed Hydra camp. No sign of activity, she reported. Well, why would she be sad about that if it's destroyed? Didn't Steve... Wouldn't that be a sign of them succeeding? No sign of activity, she reported. Phillips stared at her, his expression cold. She had disobeyed direct orders and helped Steve on his ill-fated mission. While Phillips had never really liked Steve, he didn't think the kid should have been put in a situation like that. He wasn't equipped to handle it, even if he had a captain before his name. "I can't touch Stark," Phillips said after a tense moment of silence. "He's a civilian, and a rich one. You are neither." Forgetting to mention that Stark is their #1 weapons contractor, which kind of makes this have some kind of meaning, you know? Eh. Peggy nodded. She'd expected that reaction, and frankly, she didn't care. "Not anymore, not with Steve dead. You'll have my resignation in the morning," she said. She paused, as if not sure whether to go on. "With respect, sir, I don't regret my actions. I doubt Captain Rogers did either." "I took a chance on you," Phillips said, untouched by her words. "Now America's golden boy, and a lot of other men, are dead. Because you had a crush." The response on the tip of Peggy's tongue died at the sound of a commotion outside. "That's fucking bullshit. That's not how it went in the movie." She actually had a retort for that. But, you know, fuck it. Fuck it, I suppose. Soldiers were running by, shouting to each other in excitedly. Walking to the window, Peggy and Phillips looked out. The gates of the camp were opening. And beyond them, battered and bruised, missing comma, but very much alive, was Captain America. Steve and Bucky walked slowly up the road, leading the squad of rescued soldiers back to their Italian home. They're not... These are American soldiers. A ragtag group of vehicles followed farther behind, carrying the wounded and the weak. No, they're state-of-the-art captured vehicles from fucking Hydra, dumbass. Carrying the wounded and the weak. Once inside the base, Steve pushed through the growing crowd and... made his way over to Phillips and Peggy. "Colonel," he said, his tone weary. "Some of these men need medical attention." Phillips nodded and Steve went on. "I'd like to surrender myself for disciplinary action." The colonel looked at Steve, then at the soldiers stumbling into the camp, and then back at Steve. Despite the bruises and scratches all over his body, Steve's eyes were alert. The events at the factory had changed him. He wasn't the same man who had gone beyond enemy lines. He had faced real danger, and survived. "That won't be necessary," Phillips finally said. "Sir, Just how many orders do you plan on disobeying, Captain?" Phillips barked. I got that out of order, but fucking. Then he walked away, leaving Steve open-mouthed with shock. Phillips had called him Captain. He had finally proven himself to the toughest man he knew. Turning, his eyes met Peggy's. There was a jolt of electricity, and Steve felt his heart begin to race. There was so much he wanted to say to her. But she beat him to it. "You said you'd call," she stated. He smiled. That was probably the closest he was going to get to a welcome home from Peggy, but he'd take it. "Didn't think you'd have room for all of us," he said, teasing her. No! His fucking radio was destroyed in the movie, which is an actual justification for not calling, as opposed to this. Also, you left out the fact where he said... You said you'd call... Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Oh my fucking god.
I feel you read this and you just fucking died. Just
Oh my god, you fucking killed him, dude. Oh my god, fucking damn. I didn't even... Like, I was reading this a few days ago, and I forgot so much about this. I didn't even... Like, I must have skipped over that by accident. Holy shit. Before he could say more, soldiers crowded around him, clapping him on the back and congratulating him. Peggy moved to the side as they began to chant his name. Steve couldn't keep the smile from his face. For the first time since he'd donned the Captain America costume, he truly felt like a hero. And it felt good. A few days later, Steve attended a briefing at the London headquarters of the SSR. A newspaper headline laying on one of the tables read, Captain America to receive Medal of Honor. However, Steve had no interest in attending the ceremony. He was too busy. As Peggy and Stark looked on, Steve sketched out the precise coordinates of the Hydra bases he had seen back in Schmidt's office. 40 degrees, 23 minutes north, he said. Then looking at the other two, he added, I only got a quick look. Peggy smiled. Since he had returned from the Hydra camp, things had changed between them. They both felt the spark lying just below the surface, ready to ignite. Nobody's perfect, she said, her eyes twinkling. Just then, Colonel Phillips entered. Walking over, he glanced at the map on the table and then at the blue cartridge Steve had taken from the Hydra factory. You figure out what this is yet? Phillips asked. I'm a little bit congested, can you tell? Howard Stark had suffered through Steve and Peggy's flirting for far too long. Eager for a diversion, he answered. The most powerful explosive known to man, according to Rogers. There was a hint of bitterness in Stark's voice. He prided himself on inventing the most powerful things. He didn't like it that he'd been beaten to the punch. Taking out a pair of tweezers, he gingerly picked up the cartridge. Either Schmidt's darn. This movie is a PG-13. You can swear in it if you want. Near rewritten the laws of physics, he went on. Or this isn't from... He couldn't say it out loud. It seemed impossible. I turned into Sean Connery for a second there. That Schmidt's delusional belief in gods and other worlds could have any basis in fact. He shook his head. I can say that if they've got enough of it, this war isn't going the way anyone thinks it is. Why is there emphasis putting on say? I can say that if they've got enough of it, this war isn't going the way anyone thinks it is. The room fell silent as Stark's words sank in. They were at a critical point in the war. If this cartridge was just one of many, then the results would be worldwide annihilation and Hydra domination. Yeah, no shit, it's just one of many. Steve literally saw an entire factory full of this shit, implying that there are other factories full of this shit. Duh. Fucking duh. This is how mass production works. Idiot. Ugh.
I feel that.
Walking over to the map, Phillips began tracing the various X's that marked the Hydra camps. Then we'd better take it away from them, he finally said. These are all Hydra's factories? Steve put down the pencil and shook his head. Not all of them, he answered. Sergeant Barnes said that, you can refer to your friends by their first name, right? You're an officer. You're allowed to do that. Said Hydra shipped all the bombs somewhere else, somewhere not on this map. Bucky overheard a lot when he'd been kept in the cage in Hydra's science lab. He filled Steve in as much as he could remember during the trek back from the factory. This piece of information was the most important of all. The room fell silent again as they all processed the news that there were more bombs out there, bombs of otherworldly power. They needed to get their hands on them before Schmidt had the chance to use them. Yet, never mind the fact that they all had and used tanks and guns that had that same otherworldly power, and also witnessed the usage of said tanks and guns. Because go fuck yourself, guys. I'm gonna take a drink of water here.
This book hurts my brain. You know, I'm glad I don't have to do any reading because I think I'd die.
You know, if Spavvy can't come up with a Christmas theme thing for next week, I think I'm gonna put finding it to up to you and make you read next week's thing.
Oh, I'll make sure to get something good.
Yeah, the two of you like get together and collude behind my back to find something worse than this to make us go through it.
Right.
Mm. By the way, I just to anybody watching this, I just want to make clear that was a joke. I'm not actually expecting them. Like I did. Fuck it. You guys know what I meant, and these guys know what I meant, and I was making a fucking joke. Yeah. Although, well, you know, feel free. You know, fair's fair. Or I put you guys through this. You can put me through something worse if you want. But
yeah, I'm probably just. Huh?
I just want to say, hey, I don't want you going to wherever the hell you found that one comic, like, trying to find something worse.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching at home, we did this thing. This whole thing started as a tradition, and because we have critique of stories and critique of art channels in our Discord server, and we started doing voice chat riffs on certain things, and one of the things we like to look at is bad hentai, and Dylan stumbled upon something that is not just absurd, but was actually kind of fucking weird, and we banned him from finding any more comics like that for critique.
At least for a while. Yeah, just comics like that.
Yeah, if you can, feel free to like find some fan. Just do a little bit of vetting beforehand, and that's our rule now. Like, we can't just go into something and completely blind and like that. You actually have to do a little bit of groundwork on it first, a little bit of legwork. So now we have.
Worry.
Yeah, and
I'll try and find something tame.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that that we had with Aspie Gamer, or back when he was still in the server. He kept trying to make us riff his comic, even though
and yet when I tried to give him a legitimate critique, he flipped his lid.
Yeah, and like and his comic is just kind of boring. It's not funny bad the way the stuff it was like. We looked at his art, you know. If you saw like the less than an hour we did over on Bright Steel Stars, and the only reason it's not up on CFA is because we can't, for some reason the video file just won't upload. YouTube just abandons it. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah,
it's too cringe.
Yeah, it's too cringe. It's like, it's painful. I had a fucking conniption about a couple hours in, and because of how bad it was. It's not the kind of thing that you can get much mileage out of.
Yeah, it's like, you just know it when you see it. Just like, oh, there it is.
And while they didn't know where the majority of the bombs were being shipped, thanks to Steve's map, they did know where the other Hydra bases were. Maybe destroying them would put Schmidt on edge and give SSR the advantage. Turning to face Steve, Colonel Phillips smiled. What do you say, Rogers? It's your map? Think you can wipe Hydra off it? My southern accent is getting worse by the second. I do apologize.
As a southerner, It's fine.
You know, funny thing, I'm also from the South, and I can do a much better Southern accent by accident than I'm doing on purpose right now. Part of the problem is I'm trying to imitate Tommy Lee Jones, and Tommy Lee Jones is like 80.
Yeah, I get it.
Steve returned the smile. There was nothing he would like more. There was nothing he would like to do more, and he had the perfect team in mind to help him. The Whip and Fiddle was a local London pub that served cold drinks, warm food, and good cheer. Oh, like most restaurants. I mean, I'd like to go to some place that serves warm drinks, cold food, and bad cheer. That night he was full of the soldiers Steve had helped rescue from the Hydra factory. Making his way through the crowd, Steve found Bucky in the back leaning against a bar stool. 4 other men, Fallsworth, Jones, Dernier, Merida, and Dugan, stood a bit to the side. Since rescuing them, these men had become Steve's friends, and he hoped they'd now become his teammates. Yeah, despite the fact that their heroics were almost entirely omitted from the entire section previously. I'm just gonna portray Dugan the way he was in the movie. I'm not gonna try and do a British accent for him. Let me get this straight, Dugan said after Steve explained the mission. One would think that would be asked, but I'm not entirely sure. You want us to march back in a comment against the same guys who handed us our butts last time? You whipped them from here to Japan, as the song goes. What the fuck? What the fuck? You fought your way out of a Hydra base and lived to tell the tale.
I live, bitch.
Like, seriously, the fuck?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yes, Steve answered, nodding. Dum Dum Dugan shrugged. Sounds good, he said. Ah. The other 3 nodded in agreement. The other 3? Fallsworth, Jones, Dernier, Merida, Dugan, and Bucky. There are 5 other people there. Oh my fucking god.
Did this writer get the math wrong?
How does I math right? Do I math? Can I math correctly? Does 1 plus 1 plus 1 does 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equal 3? It's like, aside from Dugan, there are 5 other people there, not counting Steve. How in the ever-loving fuck? Okay. And Steve tried not to laugh. That had been easier than he expected. Now he had the rest of the night to have a good time before they set out in the morning. Turning, he joined Bucky at the bar. Bucky was right. Wait a second. 4 other men. Fallsworth, Jones, Dernier, Merida, and Dugan. That's 5. They got the number wrong twice.
Oh my god.
How do you... How do you even do that? Uh-huh.
Man, there are things that even you're just discovering, and it's just like...
Turning, he joined Bucky at the bar. I thought Bucky was standing in a corner next to the... The bar is at the front. The back is not... There's some impossible geometry going on. What about you? Steve asked when they were alone. You ready to follow Captain America into the jaws of death? To Steve's surprise, Bucky shook his head. No, he answered, and Steve's mouth dropped open. Then Bucky added, the little shrimp, the kid in the alley who couldn't stay down and wouldn't take no for an answer. That's the guy I'm following. Steve smiled at his old friend. I gotta look that up because that doesn't sound right. The little guy from Brooklyn who was too dumb to run away from a fight, I'm following him. It was a hell of a lot more punchy in the fucking movie. Steve smiled at his old friend. They were still talking about strategy in the mission when Steve looked up and saw Peggy making her way through the crowd. She had traded her usual uniform for a striking red dress, missing comma, and looked beautiful. Noticing that his friend was distracted, Bucky turned and saw Peggy. He smiled. Not bad. Joining them, Peggy informed Steve that he had an early morning meeting with Stark. Apparently, the inventor had been working day and night to create some new equipment and needed Steve to come by and try it out. Then she noticed Falsworth and Jones standing in the middle of the room singing at the top of their lungs. Dernier and Morita looked on, laughing as the two men tried to pull a couple of girls in for a dance. I see your crack squad is prepping for duty. Bucky gave Peggy one of his trademark grins. The one that had caused plenty of Brooklyn girls to go weak in the knees. You don't like music? He asked playfully. I do, actually, Peggy answered, looking not at Bucky but at Steve. I may even, when this is all over, go dancing. The music grew louder, but it seemed that Peggy and Steve couldn't hear it. They just continued to look at one another, as though having a silent conversation. Growing tired of it, Bucky held out a hand and said, Then what are you waiting for? Dragging her gaze from Steve, Peggy turned to Bucky and put a gentle hand on his arm. The right partner, she answered, clearly meaning Steve. Then with one last look at Steve, she turned and left. When she was gone, Bucky groaned. I'm invisible, he cried. Then a realization struck him and he laughed. Oh God, I've turned into you. Steve gave him a wicked smile. Don't take it too hard. Don't take it so hard, he said teasingly. Maybe she's got a friend. As Bucky stormed off, Steve just stood there with a smile on his face. True, he was about to go on a dangerous mission, but things suddenly felt really good. He had his best friend back, a great team to rely on, and maybe, just maybe, a future with Peggy. For the first time in a long while, things were beginning to look up. End chapter 9, thoughts so far.
Just so not only can she not write, she can't even do math. Like you would think they would have at least some quality control.
Now, I think I know what... Falsworth, Jones, Dernier, and Morita.
I mean, these don't have to be like obscure, but really good, masterpieces, but at least just something mundane. This is just...
Yeah, all I'm expecting is my $6-7 book to not have massive gaping factual errors in it. My less than 200-page book to be mildly competently written. I wrote more coherent things than this when I was 10, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
The next morning, Steve reported to Stark's office as requested. But when he got there, Stark had not yet arrived. A beautiful young blonde woman sitting behind a desk informed Steve that the inventor would be there in a minute. Then she introduced herself as Private Lorraine. The women of America owe you their thanks, she said, getting up and walking over to Steve. And seeing as they're not here... Before Steve knew what was oh, sorry, I should go back in the whore voice, shouldn't I? The women of America owe you their thanks, she said, getting up and walking over to Steve. And seeing as they're not here... Before Steve knew what was happening, Private Lorraine leaned in and kissed him. For a moment he protested, but then gave in and kissed her back. No, he fucking didn't! He was desperately trying to pull back the whole time! He was like... He's like... did you not see the movie? Did you not see the movie? Did you not watch the fucking...
Yeah. Just, this whole thing is beyond questionable.
Like you can see his body language in the movie. He stiffens up and he's like trying to push her away without not being too rough, and he's come on. Steve didn't want to be kissing this woman. He wanted to be kissing Peggy, who was now standing right there. She had entered the office mid-kiss, all one word, no hyphen, and the look on her face could have turned Amanda Stone. Turning, she stormed out the door. Steve followed, hot on her heels. Presumably still kissing Private Lorraine, because they didn't mention him breaking that off at any point in time. Agent Carter, he called. Wait a second, but it was no use. She wanted nothing to do with him. Sighing, Steve turned and went back into Stark's office to wait. So maybe things weren't going as well as he thought. Line break. A few minutes later, Howard Stark finally showed up. After giving Private Lorraine a grin... We're 100 pages in, by the way. He led Steve down to his lab, where technicians were busy unwrapping various pieces of equipment. Others were installing futuristic machines, like those Steve had seen back at the World Exhibition of Tomorrow. Peggy stood to one side, her arms crossed. Ignoring everyone else, Steve walked over to a slightly less cluttered section of the lab. Lying on a table was what looked like a bodysuit. Steve cocked his head. What on earth was this? Steel micromesh for the sleeves, Stark explained, pointing to the suit's arms, titanium panels for your more vulnerable parts, chest plates, and such. Steve's eyes grew... Excuse me. Steve's eyes grew wide as Stark moved down the table and picked up a gray-colored material. He was getting his very own state-of-the-art combat suit. Carbon polymer, Stark went. Carbon polymers, Stark went on. It's flexible, insulated, fire-resistant, and ought to hold its own against your average military-grade trench knife, and not against a bullet or anything Hydra's got. And that's when Stark presented Steve with the biggest surprise of all. Eyeing the beat-up shield Steve held in his hand, Stark walked over to a cart of half-built shields. Some of them had gadgets on them, one had lights, another looked like it had been painted with camouflage. I tinkered with a few ideas for improvements, but in the end, he pulled a tarp covering one portion of the cart. I thought we'd keep it simple. Lying on the cart was a mighty shield. It didn't have any gadgets or lights or hidden compartments. Instead, it was lightweight, balanced, and almost indestructible. It was the perfect offensive and defensive symbol of the United States of America, and when it becomes Captain America's most trusted and well-known weapon. Cautiously... Way to spoil it, by the way, guys. Cautiously, Steve reached out and ran a hand over the shield's smooth surface, then gave it a tap and it rang like a bell. Vibranium, Stark informed him. 100 times stronger than steel and 1/3 the weight. Picking it up, Steve slid the shield onto his arm as Stark continued. It's completely vibration absorbent. Should make a bullet feel like a cotton ball. Steve smiled. This is the coolest thing ever. This is the coolest thing ever. Turning, he asked Peggy what she thought. In answer, she pulled out her gun and fired right at him. The slug hit the shield and flattened out, plunking harmlessly to the ground. I think it works, she said. Then she stalked out of the room. Steve gulped. He had some serious explaining to do. But it would have to wait. Right now, he had to go after Hydra. He just hoped that Peggy would forgive him by the time he came back. End chapter 10. Thoughts so far?
I'm just dreading how she's gonna write Samuel L. Jackson at the when he wakes up in modern day.
Oh, just you wait. Just you fucking wait, man. You will notice that Steve doesn't find the shield of his own accord and adopt it of his own accord because fucking stupid. Allow me to look at the script. Yeah, so in the script, Stark doesn't present him with the shield. He tries to get him interested in the more complicated ones, and they don't mention the fact that vibranium is incredibly rare. Anything else? Any comments based on that? Also, they rearranged the uniform thing. Because the uniform... Never mind.
No, I get it. It's just...
They fucked it up. They fucked it up and they always fucked it up. No, they fucked it up the way they always fuck it up. Chapter 11. For the next few months, Captain America and his ragtag unit of Howling Commandos traveled all over Europe, chasing down and destroying as many Hydra bases as they could find. First, they headed to France. This was one of the weaker Hydra stations, and in no time the team took it over. Back at their headquarters, Peggy replaced one of the X's with an SSR flag. Then they headed to Poland, where Bucky took out the guard at the front gate so the team could enter. As the others streamed past them, he and Steve traded knowing smiles. It was just like being back in Brooklyn, only slightly more dangerous. Slightly, you say.
Yeah, slightly. Oh my... Yeah, because... Yes,
Another SSR flag is pinned on the map.
Yeah, espionage is only slightly more dangerous than Brooklyn, yes.
Espionage and actual war.
Yes.
Another SSR flag was pinned on the map. Next up was a base in Czechoslovakia. Signaling for the others to wait, Captain America made his way inside by himself. Ducking and weaving past the Hydra troopers, he found the collection of bombs. He quickly placed a detonator among them and grabbed one of the troopers' bikes, jumped on it, and raced away. He barely managed to crash through a factory window before the place exploded behind him. Another base destroyed. The rest of the team was having fun taking revenge against the organization that had held them prisoner. In Greece, Dernier sent another explosive charge, and boom! The place blew to bits. Pinned down in Germany, Marita shouted coordinates to Jones over the handheld radio. Jones quickly fired his weapon while at the same time Fallsworth threw a grenade. The base exploded, another Hydra camp down. Line break. The team's wave of destruction did not go unnoticed. Johann Schmidt had taken refuge in a secret Greek camp, one of the few remaining Hydra strongholds. Standing in front of his troop leaders, Schmidt, now known to his followers as Red Skull, raged on. "We are close to an offensive that will shake the planet," he said angrily. "Yet we are continually delayed because you can't do it with a clown dressed in a flag." This was unacceptable. Captain America and his Howling Commandos needed to be taken out. Fast. For the first time since the attacks began, Red Skull's evil smile had returned. He had come up with a good idea, an idea that would take care of Captain America once and for all. Unaware of Red Skull's plans, Cap, Bucky, and the rest of the team gathered on the plateau high above a Russian valley. The sun was not up yet, and the wind was cold as it whipped around them. Steve was nervous. There had been no base in this area marked on the map, which meant it was either a trap or a huge find. Using one of the Hydra code using one of the Hydra code transceivers they'd stolen from a captured base, they had intercepted a transmission claiming that a large Hydra train was on the move through a nearby Alpine pass, and that Hydra's top scientist, who shall remain nameless, I suppose, was on board. Steve had made the decision to act. It was risky to go into unknown territory, but this might be the chance they needed to finish off Hydra once and for all. As Jones listened to another transmission, "They're putting chemicals in the water out, turn the friggin' frogs gay." Dugan and Fallsworth kept a lookout on the valley below. Meanwhile, Cap, Bucky, and Dernier moved closer to the edge. "The train engineer just radioed ahead," Jones called out. "Hydra gave him permission to open the throttle. Wherever their base is, he's trying to make it there by dawn." He paused and then added, "with the biggest shipment yet." Just then, a train whistle blew, piercing the silence of the night. It was daytime when this mission happened in the movie. What the fuck?
Yeah, what's with all the time of day changes? It's just like...
It's like everything has been shifted by, like, 12 hours.
Yep.
Looking through his binoculars, Dugan saw a large futuristic train racing down the tracks. Turning, he nodded at Steve. It was time. Quickly, Dernier helped Cap, Bucky, and Jones strap into harnesses. "Shouldn't you guys have already done that?" Then he snapped the three hooks onto a long cable that stretched out over the pass. This is how they were going to get onto the train, but they had to time it just right. If they didn't, they'd either be crushed by the train or by the opposite wall of the valley. The train whistle blew again, and Captain America nodded at his men. Now, together they pushed off, zipping down toward the oncoming train. Three. Weren't there, like, 6 of them? What the fuck? Zipping toward the oncoming train. For a moment it looked as if they were going to miss, but then with a thud they landed on the slick roof. Unhooking themselves, they let the cable fly away. They didn't want to leave any evidence of their presence. As planned, Jones headed toward the engine of the train. His mission was to somehow stop the train. You could have just said "it" there and saved 2 words and, like, 1, 2, 3, several letters, it doesn't matter. So the rest of the train would have enough time to get down there. Rest of the team, would have enough time to get down there. Steve and Bucky, meanwhile, were to go after the explosives. Jumping down onto the train, the friends found themselves in the first car. It was empty. Moving into the next car, they exchanged looks. It was empty too. This didn't seem right. Cautiously, they entered the next car. Unlike the others, this car was pitch dark and eerily quiet. It's fucking nighttime. Why wouldn't it be pitch dark if there's nobody in there?
I don't know.
And eerily quiet. Steve couldn't even hear the sound of the rushing wind outside. Then wham! Behind them, a steel plate dropped down, blocking the back door. A moment later, the lights flickered on. It was a trap! Standing in front of them was the largest Hydra trooper Steve had ever seen. The monster of a man was easily over 6.5 feet tall, and instead of arms, he had 2 huge robotic cannons attached to his shoulders. 6.5... Steve is 6.5 feet tall. This guy is only 2 inches taller than he is at most.
This pains me.
It was the perfect plan. Sure, Red Skull had lured Captain America here so that this thing could kill him. Steve shook his head in revolt. He and his men had come too far to let that happen. Pulling out his gun, which he wasn't using by this point in the movie, I might add, Cap opened fire, but the bullets just zinged harmlessly off the trooper's armor. Then as Steve watched in horror, the trooper raised one of its cannon arms and fired. Blam! A blue energy pulse sent Steve flying into the side wall of the train, knocking the breath out of him. Then the trooper turned and aimed at Bucky. Another burst came from the cannon, and Bucky barely managed to duck out of the way. The blue energy missed him and blasted a hole in the side of the train. Outside, the valley walls rushed by as the train continued to speed up. Struggling to his feet, Captain America held up his shield and started to advance on the giant trooper. Once again, the Hydra agent held up one of his cannon arms. The weapon hummed as the blue energy filled it, and the trooper leveled it out, aiming right for the star on Steve's chest, even though he can't see it because the shield is in that. The blue energy burst out of the cannon in a steady stream, but Cap lifted his shield. Lifted? It was in place earlier. What the fuck? And the energy hit it instead of him. That's what a shield is for, dickhead. With determined steps, Captain America pushed against the stream of energy, getting closer and closer to the trooper. Then with one last mighty shove, he pushed the shield out in front of him, sending all the blue energy right back at the Hydra agent, causing him to flow back through the gaping hole in the train car and disappear from view. Steve collapsed to the ground. Suddenly there was a shout from the other side of the train car. Steve sprinted over just as a side door opened. There with a grin plastered across his face was Jones. He was holding Hydra's lead scientist in front of him. Hydra's plan to trap and destroy Captain America and his Howling Commandos had failed. The heroes had succeeded. Yeah, some fucking plan. You sent one guy against a super soldier and his army buddies. What the fuck? Oh, this is painful. Oh, also, we're at the end of chapter 11 here. Did you notice anything missing from the train sequence?
Bucky when he the whole scene with Bucky falling off the train, right?
Ding, 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 motherfucker. Or where the hell is that? It's kind of one of the major pushes of the whole movie, and also one of the things that makes the Winter Soldier possible. What the hell? What the hell happened here? It's only a Captain America book. Bucky and Steve going missing at some point is kind of a given. Being presumed dead, like, come on. Any other comments? Anything else so far before we move on to chapter 12?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be like baffled if they like don't do the scene entirely with Bucky. It's like, well, what are they gonna do then? Because God, I hope the novelization of Winter Soldier's not as bad as this.
I haven't read it. I don't know who wrote it. We'll have to find out, I guess.
Hopefully they got someone who actually understands these characters.
My next pick in a little while is probably going to be the Iron Man novel, because I'm going back to the beginning and seeing where all this bullshit started. Captain America, Chapter 12. Captain America and his team made their way back to London headquarters. Now we don't see the thing about Steve not being able to get drunk. Phillips had ordered them to bring the scientist right to him. It was time to get answers. It didn't take long to break the Weasley man. He sat in a bound chair, sweat dripping down his face. Schmidt believes he walks in the footsteps of gods, the scientist told Phillips. Only the entire world will satisfy him. Yeah, we already knew that. Phillips scoffed. The Hydra leader had a few screws loose, but he posed a serious threat nevertheless. What's his target? The colonel asked. Everywhere. The Hydra agent answered vaguely, yeah, no shit. Slowly losing will to live. Help me. Help me. Please, Riff. Give me Give me riffs. Give me riffs, give me fire, they give me that which I desire. Uh-huh. After a few more hours of interrogation, Phillips had all the information he was going to get. He met with Peggy and ran through what he had learned. Then he called the others into the conference room. When everyone was settled, he began. Johann Schmidt belongs in the bug house, he said. He thinks he's a god and he's going to blow up half the world to prove it. Peggy stood up and walked over to a map of the world. Starting with the United States. The room grew silent as everyone processed the news. We kind of already knew that. There's nothing new here. Schmidt's a fucking Nazi. We already know that he wants the U.S. gone because the U.S. stands in the way of the Nazis and world domination. They're fucking Nazis.
Und wie?
Und they will have war. Schmidt's working with powers beyond our capabilities. He gets across the Atlantic, he'll wipe out the entire eastern seaboard in an hour. Nothing we couldn't have learned from the information we already had.
This is big brain time.
As she spoke, she looked directly at Steve. Since he had returned from his latest mission, he had been withdrawn and quiet. Maybe because his best friend died in the original version.
Oh my god, did they literally just skip over that and he's dead anyway? No,
They did not have the
fucking way.
opportunity to talk about what had happened with Private Lorraine, and now it seemed they might never have the chance. Except for the fact that, they, kinda had several months, because this took place over the course of approximately, let's see here. Cut to montage, December, January, February, August. Almost an entire fucking year. Good God.
I mean, honestly, just
No, over a year. This took place over a year. They literally just skipped past an entire year. You guys had a year to talk about this. What the fuck?
and they just outright skipped over Bucky's death.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
A shiver of fear ran through her as she thought about what this latest intel meant for Steve and for her. As Peggy spoke, everyone in the room turned and looked at the map, their eyes focusing on New York City. They reached thinking the same thing. The United States was completely defenseless against an attack of that magnitude. The majority of soldiers had been deployed to either to Europe or the Pacific. Schmidt was heading across the Atlantic. They had to act fast. How much time have we got? Dernier asked. Under 24 hours. Phillips looked grave. Under 24 hours. Hang on. Let me check this out. Okay. So it was under 24 hours, but there was more dialogue there. No one said anything for a moment. They had just returned from fighting Hydra and were tired, having been pushed to their limits, but they couldn't sit around and do nothing. "Where is Red Skull now?" Steve asked, standing up. "Hydra's last base is here, in the Alps," Phillips said, pointing to the map. Then he traced his finger down as he added, 500 feet below the surface. That's actually something they pulled from the movie. Bravo. Steve nodded. This wasn't going to be easy, but they could do it. They had to do it. Looking at the rest of his team, he saw that they had the same determination in their eyes that he probably did. Captain America and the Howling Commandos were going to the Alps. End chapter 12. Thoughts so far?
It's just,
Oh,
I
hey,
think
Kevin.
at this
Welcome
point,
back. We can't hear you anymore.
hold on.
Oh, come on!
I have you at 200%. I can't fucking hear you.
Not hear me.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
Well, you missed Bucky's death being omitted and the coupon shot of the reveal of the Red Skull. But as I showed those to you on Friday, I think, that's not really that important. You already know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah, it's a good thing Kevin's here. I mentally checked out.
Sorry. I had dinner. It was tasty.
Good. I had dinner before I started, and I'm wishing I had something to look forward to after this.
Indeed.
I think I'm just gonna take a hot shower and wash away all this sin.
Oh, come on.
Kevin, can you, either turn your microphone up or get closer to it?
I am as close as humanly possible to it.
Okay. Okay, noise suppression is off on my end. Do you have noise suppression on?
Let me check.
uh,
I'm gonna enable.
I'm looking for something to eat real quick.
On. Is better now?
Nope.
Oh, come on.
I can just barely hear him.
Okay, how is it that my volume isn't high on here?
Okay, now we can hear you a little better.
Oh. Are we already done with the roasting?
No, we're not. We're not quite. We just got done with chapter 12.
How long are we on the last chapter?
Yes.
Goody. I got here right at the end.
Cap and his team worked, chapter 13. Cap and his team worked quickly to prepare for their next and hopefully last mission. Except for the fact that once you defeat Hydra, there is still a Germany. This is like one battle is not going to win the whole war. There's still a Nazi Germany. There's still an Axis powers. The Japanese are still out there. The Italians are still out there. The Russians are out there about to start more shit. Stark outfitted them with equipment capable of taking out Hydra's defenses and of protecting them from enemy fire. While Steve gave the rest of the team a few hours off to relax and recharge, Peggy and Phillips briefed him on the layout of the base and the surrounding landscape. He would be taking the lead in the attack. The others would follow him once he was in, providing backup and, if necessary, an escape route. The part of the base that was above ground, all one word, would be well guarded, although that is all one word, typically, I think. But it would still be easy for Captain America to sneak in. No, it fucking wouldn't. The tricky part would be finding Red Skull among the labyrinthine corridors and rooms deep below the surface. The SSR didn't have specific information on where the Hydra leader would be holding up inside. Steve would be going in blind. But he wasn't worried. In fact, he had a plan that he hadn't shared with Peggy or Phillips. If everything went as he suspected it would, Red Skull would come to him. Soon, everything was in place. The team, including Peggy and Phillips, took a plane to the designated spot a few dozen miles from the base. Their hope was to land undetected, which would give Steve a head start. After that, it was all up to him. A few hours after landing, Captain America raced his motorcycle through the dense forest near the Hydra base. His team was behind him, getting ready for their part. And Steve was running on pure adrenaline. He was getting ready. He was finally going to take Red Skull down, hopefully, and make the evil man pay for all the death and destruction he had been responsible for, completely ignoring the fact that Steve's motivation in this scene was to avenge his presumably dead buddy. And, that's not happening. What the fuck? What the fuck, guys? What the fuck?
Indeed.
Whatever happened today, Captain America had only one goal, to face Red Skull alone. He was so focused on Schmidt that he didn't notice when his bike unwittingly tripped a wire laying across the small road. Nearby, in a secret Hydra outpost, a warning light blinked. Seeing it, 2 Hydra guards leaped onto their bikes and headed toward the road. Soon they had caught up to Steve, sorry. The sound of roaring engines caused Steve to turn just as the Hydra troopers, drove onto the road. They were just a few feet behind him and gaining fast. Revving his engine, Captain America shot forward, but the sentries were too close. They gained on him. Before he could maneuver away, one of them jerked his handlebars to the left, sideswiping Cap's bike. The motorcycle wobbled, but Steve managed to steady it. Then he quickly jerked his wheel to the right, causing him to careen into the trooper. There was the sound of metal crunching as the bike frames crashed into each other. Captain America needed to get rid of this trooper. Looking up ahead, he smiled. It seemed he'd found just the way. Gunning his engine, he hunched low over the handlebars and sped forward, the troops staying right behind him. Then at the last moment, Cap dropped his bike into a slide, ducking below a low-hanging branch. The trooper didn't have time to react, and whack, he hit the branch head-on. The Hydra agent went flying, his bike exploding in the fiery crash. Dylan, you here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was looking up the Winter Soldier
And meanwhile,
novelization, and apparently, from the reviews, it is equally as bad.
tune out the BS. I decided to rewatch the literal trailer of Resident Evil Afterlife, which is unironically better than the goddamn movie.
I have seen that. I can very much say that yes, that is true.
Dylan, go to
Yeah, but
for the literal trailer of Resident Evil Afterlife, by Tobuscus, before things went wrong for him.
Hydra agent went flying. There was no time to celebrate taking down the guard. Gunshots rang out as the other trooper... Weren't there only 2? Didn't he take 2 out? What the fuck? What is this? The original Modern Warfare?
Indeed.
Huh.
Cap ducked and wove his bike down the road, trying to stay out of the way of the flying bullets, but he couldn't keep it up forever. Thinking quickly, he slammed on his brakes, the tires screeching on the pavement. In moments, the trooper caught up with him. When he did, Cap grabbed the handlebars on the other bike. Using all his super strength, he clung tightly as the trooper swerved back and forth across the road. Steve stuck like glue. Seeing a huge pine tree ahead, Steve jerked the sentry's bike toward it. Just before they were about to crash, Steve turned at the last possible second, saving himself from certain death, but the Hydra agent couldn't get away. His bike slammed into the pine and exploded. Steve smiled. 2 down, a few more to go. It was time to get inside the Hydra base. There were 3. As far as I can tell, there were 3. Did I miss something, or did he take out 3?
Evidently, he took
Kevin, whatever you can do to make yourself sound louder, please do. Like, if you have to go into, voice and video and, like, max out your input volume or something, try that.
I did max out my input volume.
Okay, then.
Push to talk help?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, I can hear you just fine.
Of course you can, but Alex for some reason can't. What is it with my microphone? Do I have to buy another one?
I actually had to turn Dylan down because even at 150%, he was louder than you are at 200, and I don't even know why. Yeah, I don't even know why. The Hydra base stood high on a mountaintop in the Alps. Yes, we know. Its buildings protected by a large wall covered in barbed wire. We're going to build the wall, and we're going to make the Nazis pay for it. Alarms were already sounding as Captain America approached, but he didn't care. This was all part of his plan. The plan he hadn't told Peggy or Phillips about, as you told us earlier. But he did tell the Howling Commandos about it, and hopefully they were at the ready. Hopefully. This is reminding me of the fucking, the Verge, PC build thing, you know? Where there was like, get yourself a Swiss Army knife that get yourself a Swiss Army knife that hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver. Seriously, oh, what the fuck? Excuse me.
So, have you read any of the other novels? Are they equally as bad?
I don't know. I've got all of the Phase 1 novels right here, and I'm going to be checking them out eventually.
Yeah, because, like I said, apparently the Winter Soldier one is equally as bad as the first novelization. Like, I don't know how they managed to. But...
in a completely close distance.
Huh? Oh, I gotta mute myself on.
Yeah, we can hear you though. You can keep talking. We don't. It's all right. Any excuse for me to not have to keep going with this? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. You're not. There's no background noise. When he was about 20 feet away from the wall, Cap gunned his bike's engines. A few feet later, he pulled back on the handlebars. As the engine groaned under the effort, he jumped the bike up and over the wall. He landed with a thud safely on the other side. Hydra troopers immediately opened fire as Steve tore across the compound. With lightning-quick reflexes, he stayed ahead of the bullets until one hit his tire. With a loud pop, the tire blew out, sending Steve over the handlebars. He hit the ground but got to his feet, fists swinging as the Hydra troopers closed in. But there were just too many of them. They overpowered him. Captain America had been captured.
You know what would have made that interesting? If after he got shot down, he would have thrown the motorbike at something like in Age of Ultron.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hey, isn't there something from later on where something like that happened and he used it as a weapon because he's Captain America and he's great at fucking improvising in a goddamn plan.
Arthur, we have a plan.
Throws his mighty shield.
Shit, hold on.
Those who choose to oppose his shield must yield. Unless you're a plane or a bomb or some ice, then you choose to take a dip because it seemed nice when Captain America throws his mighty Mighty shield. Questions?
No.
Sure.
I mean, I have several questions for the author of this book, none for you at this moment.
Oh, I'm sure you'd have plenty of questions for me.
A few minutes later, Captain America found himself tied up inside Johann Schmidt's office. Red Skull circled him with a sneer on his face. Schmidt would make the hero watch as he destroyed his beloved country. Schmidt's office was dark and oppressive. On one wall, a large picture of Schmidt with his red skull showing in all its hideous glory, despite the fact that we cut out all of the scenes of that portrait being painted, was displayed. Steve didn't know whether it was supposed to serve as a warning to those who entered, or whether Schmidt was just so crazy he just liked to look at his disfigured face. Noticing Captain America's gaze, Red Skull leaned in closer. "Is this why you are here?" he asked. "To finish this face-to-face?" "Against your face," Cap retorted, "I wouldn't stand a chance." Red Skull growled and savagely booted Captain America in the head, knocking him off balance. Then he spun around and slammed him face first into the hard concrete floor. "A sensible man would lie down," Red Skull said. "The more you fight, the more painful your death will be." I'm like, my German accent is bleeding into Spanish. I can't help it. I'm not that good at German accents. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Why isn't this? You know, what's one thing that that Red Skull should have said?
What?
You'll see. You'll see. Love, like everything. They'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Okay, go ahead and repeat that. I didn't hear it the first time.
"You see, Mr. Rogers, cookies need love, like everything." Questions?
Yeah, what?
I heard him start to do the accent, then he like cut out.
So you see, Mr. Rogers, cookies need love, like everything. Oh, come on. I can tell you didn't. Did you hear
I heard it that time.
I mean, I heard it. I don't get it, but I heard it.
Have you seen The Matrix Revolutions?
I have. I try to forget about it.
Cookies.
Yeah.
Like everything. Guess what Hugo Weaving's character says that?
Ew. Huh.
There needs to be... We need to have a reference to that line at some point. We just need
Just,
it.
you know. Yeah, just keep that on the DL, dude. We're not talking about that yet.
Yes. Wait,
Captain
why am I
America.
calling you Mom? You're 3 years younger.
Captain America ignored Red Skull's words. Struggling, he turned and tried to kick Schmidt, but Steve was in an awkward position and the kick went wide. Also on his knees and tied up. Grabbing Cap's foot, the Hydra leader swung Captain America into a wall, instantly knocking the wind out of him. But Captain America wasn't ready to give up yet. "I can do this all day," Steve said, breathing heavily. Remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember what they did?
Yep, they took out I could do this all day.
Yeah. Yeah, they took
So
it,
what? So what's the point of including it here?
Good question. "I believe you can," Red Skull replied. He pulled out a pistol and aimed it at Steve's head. "But I am on a schedule." Captain America didn't look scared or upset. In fact, he looked happy. "So am I," he said, just as the office window behind him shattered. Fallsworth and the rest of the Howling Commandos crashed into the room, swinging from ropes and firing their weapons. Using the distraction to his advantage, Captain America rose to his feet and barreled into Red Skull. The Hydra leader went flying into the far wall, leaving a human-sized dent in it. Meanwhile, explosions rocked the base above. "You lose your whole base just to give me a beating," Steve said. "Sloppy."
Steve does it with hesitation. Notices a bag of wonderful pistachios right in front of him.
Rage filled Schmidt's red face, turning it even redder. How is that even possible? Reaching out, he gave Captain America a 1-2 punch that sent him flying backward. As he tried to recover, Schmidt raced across the room and grabbed the titanium box. It was the same one Steve had seen back when he rescued Bucky. Whatever was inside must be important to Schmidt, he thought. Steve planned on taking it from the Hydra leader before destroying him.
Cap made Red Skull blush. Oh, woo.
Please note, this is the Tesseract, which has not been introduced up to now. Because they cut that entire scene.
Oh my god.
Steve then grabs a pistachio out, and he bites into it. And a voice says, "Steve does it with his mouth."
As Steve watched, Schmidt bolted from the room. The rest of Steve's team had taken care of the Hydra troopers who had tried to fight them, and were now cleaning up the mess. Picking up Cap's shield, Fallsworth handed it to him and watched as Steve used the sharp edge to break his shackles. At the same moment, more guards entered and and fired their weapons. The Howling Commandos surrounded a Hydra agent who fumbled for a cyanide capsule.
Weren't the Howling Commandos not present?
No, they busted in through the window.
But were they not in the novel, period?
No, they were in the novel, they just weren't mentioned during the battle that introduced them.
That's so fucking stupid!
Yeah, it's almost like this.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Steve then picks up another pistachio that seems to have already been opened. He says to himself, "Okay, this will be easy." Steve does it with the easy ones.
Also, Rudnick seems to believe there are only 4 Howling Commandos, despite there being 5 that she lists off.
I seriously want to see if I can get a copy of the movie, either or tomorrow or another point. Just watch it and completely forget this whole novel exists. But then I realized, oh god, I gotta stream tomorrow.
Yeah.
That'll be fun, I'm sure.
Yeah. I have it. I can just go watch it.
Yeah, I actually have 2 copies of it.
And after Steve asks the voice, "Are we done yet? Can I finish the battle?" And then the voice said, "Steve has a long way to go." Steve just looks at the bag and he realizes that he might have to eat the whole bag. And he's like, "How long do I have to keep doing this?" And the voice said, "Steve does it until I'm satisfied."
The Howling Commandos surrounded a Hydra agent who fumbled for a cyanide capsule. "Cut off one head, 2 more shall rise," the agent began to say. Just then, blam! Finishing the trooper's sentence as he fell to the ground. A blam finished the trooper's sentence as he fell to the ground. Colonel Phillips strode through the base, machine gun in hand, and addressed the Howling Commandos. "Now let's go find 2 more, ... he said. Confident that the Colonel and the Howling Commandos could handle the rest of the Hydra troopers, Steve turned and raced down the corridor. Captain America was going after Red Skull. End chapter 13. Thoughts so far?
I am now imagining Steve eating wonderful pistachios as he's doing all of this.
Yeah.
And then after he's done with the bag, the voice then says, "Steve did it with everyone." Suddenly, another bag of pistachios shows up, and then the voice said, "Steve just earned another bag of pistachios. Wonderful pistachios. Get cracking." Steve's like, "I am cracking. I am cracking."
Okay, so the next thing we're
That
doing it.
enhance or devalue the story.
So the next thing we're doing it has to be Christmas related.
Yes.
Oh well, damn
We have to follow it up with Kiss Save Santa.
that. Okay, yeah, that narrows it down. I'll probably find some cringy fanfic. So I'll find something.
I'm surprised you guys didn't catch on to the double entendre of doing it. Steve does it with his mouth. Steve
Right. Yeah, no, I got it.
Steve does it until I'm satisfied. Okay, so basically,
You're not you when you're horny. Steve satisfies.
He could do this all day. Suddenly, he gets sentenced to death by Snoo Snoo. And then all of a sudden, the Amazonians end up being worn out. He comes out with nary scratch on, and he's like, "I'll do this all day."
Chapter 14. The underground base was full of corridors that twisted and turned, making it easy to get lost. Turning a corner, Captain America saw Red Skull up ahead, the box still clutched tightly in his hands. He put on a burst of speed. Hearing footsteps, Red Skull turned and pulled out a gun. It looked a lot like the one Steve had seen on the train. What one? Like the one that the trooper had on his fucking arms? How? As he watched, it filled with blue energy and the blast came straight at him. Quickly, Cap raised his vibranium shield, and the blue energy bounced off it in a brilliant flash of light. With a roar of frustration, Schmidt began running again. Steve followed him until they came to a four-way intersection. The Hydra leader dashed through the doorway straight ahead. Then, turning, he gave Steve another evil sneer. Reaching over, he pressed a button and a large blast door began to lower. There was no way Captain America was going to let Red Skull get away, not when he was this close to taking down the Hydra leader. Pulling his arm back, he flung his mighty shield straight at the closing door. Thunk! It jammed the door, leaving enough room for Steve to crawl under.
It hits and goes.
Yeah. Dink. Standing up on the other side, he looked around. There are no spaces in this sentence.
Oh my god, no way. Like,
I'm not kidding. Take a look at this. Like, compared to the spacing on the rest of these, there are no spaces in this sentence.
oh my god.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
How do you mess up that bad?
That's a damn good question. I don't even know.
This is like my early fan fiction.
Standing up on the other side, Kami looked around. All one word, I guess. There was nowhere to go but straight ahead. He quickly began running down the corridor, only to come to a screeching halt, missing Kama. Standing in front of him, holding two weapons that looked like huge flamethrowers, stood a Hydra trooper. The trooper had a tank filled to the top with a powerful and deadly blue substance. It's called napalm. Strapped to his back. Steve gulped. This wasn't good. Raising the twin guns, the trooper pulled the trigger. On his back, the tanks gurgled and whined as it sent fiery blue energy through the tubes and into the guns. Cap lifted his hand, prepared to use his shield to protect himself once more, but then he remembered. He left it back at the intersection. Why? Why?
Why would you leave? Why did he do that?
I have a question for God. Why?
God responds, "Because shut up."
Probably.
Aww. I'm looking at my dad's puppy, who is
Good.
Maisie. Looking at a cute puppy.
Good. Good for you.
He's a sweetie pie. Sorry, I love cute dogs.
The trooper fired blue energy at Steve. The super soldier braced himself for the impact, hoping his super strength might make him fireproof, as opposed to, you know, his fireproof outfit that they established as such earlier in the damn book. Yeah. When boom, the wall behind the trooper exploded and a blast knocked the energy canister off his back. A huge tank rolled into the hall. Behind the wheel was Peggy Carter. Tanks don't have wheels.
No, they do not.
The wheels on the tank go.
The wheels on a tank go clunk, 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 clunk.
What is this? The tanks, the Fuhrer Bradley versus tank scene from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood?
Sure. You're late, Steve said, smiling at her. He had never been so happy to see anyone in his life. Peggy smiled back at him, her eyes warm. With a wave of thanks, Captain America took off after Red Skull. At the end of the hall, Steve came to another doorway. Racing through it, he found himself inside a giant hangar built deep into the mountain. A rumbling filled the air. As Steve watched, a gigantic plane rolled past. But this was no normal plane. It was at least 4 times the size of the biggest U.S. Army plane and looked to be outfitted with numerous guns, missing comma between plane and. Excuse me. Looking around, Steve noticed that there were 5 more just like it. These must be the planes that Schmidt was going to use to attack the United States. They're big enough to carry the blue bombs and thousands of Hydra troopers, he realized. Change of tense, because apparently we don't know what maintaining tense is. Looking back at the plane that was making its way down the hangar, Steve saw Schmidt sitting in the cockpit. The Hydra leader turned and smiled. Steve couldn't stop him now. The plane began moving faster and faster. "Where are you going to go?" Steve asked out loud. "There's no way out." Steve. Cap. Buddy. Do you, how do you think
okay?
Buddy, how do you think they got it in here? They didn't just build it here with no plan. You do realize that, right?
Do you or have the retarded?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I can't argue with that. Holy fuck.
Indeed.
But he'd spoken too soon. At the other end of the hangar, giant doors began to open, letting in the glare of sunlight. This wasn't just a hangar, it was a runway. No shit, Sherlock. Why would they just have a hangar?
Indeed.
Why wouldn't you have a way to get your planes out of the hangar? Especially in an underground base. Captain America started running, but it was no use. Red Skull was too far ahead. Steve was fast, but not as fast as a giant plane. His fists pumped at his sides as he tried harder and harder to pick up speed. He was just about to give up when the sound of a car engine came from right next to him. Looking over, Steve saw Colonel Phillips sitting behind the wheel of Schmidt's classic German car. No. The car would have been current at the time. It would not, I repeat, would not have been called a classic car at the time. God.
This whole book, the response to this book is no.
Peggy was in the back seat, holding Cap's shield. Quickly, Steve leaped inside the car as Phillips stepped on the gas, sending them shooting forward. In moments, they caught up with the plane. The car shuddered as Phillips pulled it up next to the plane's large back tire. The wheel was attached to a long metal landing gear that's extended up to the inside of the plane itself. Captain America was about to pull himself through the window and on. It's a convertible. The top was down. How did he get in if the top wasn't down? When Peggy let out a shout, Captain America was about to pull himself through the window and onto the wheel of the plane when Peggy let out a shout. "Wait!" she cried. Then before Steve knew what was happening, she pulled him into a kiss. For a moment, Steve forgot about Schmidt. He forgot about Hydra and the pending attack. For once in his life, Steve Rogers got the girl. Reluctantly, he pulled away. He had to go. Hopefully, he'd return from this mission and ask Peggy to a dance. After one last look at Peggy, Steve turned and jumped onto the wheel. Just as the plane burst out of the tunnel behind him, Steve saw Phillips slam on the brakes, and he breathed a sigh of relief that they were okay. But then he looked down. The jet was flying over a huge gorge, and Steve was losing his grip. If he fell now, there was no way he would survive. Just then, the plane's landing gear groaned and slowly started to retract. In moments, Captain America found himself inside the belly of the plane. He let out a huge breath. That had been way too close for comfort. Steve's relief was short-lived. As he let go of the landing gear, he found himself looking at a huge flight deck within the belly of the giant plane. 8 fighter jets were armed and ready, their noses aimed towards the back of the plane. He'd been right. This was one of the planes that was going to attack the United States, and there were 5 more back inside the hangar, unless Phillips and the team had managed to stop them from taking off. Captain America had to find Red Skull, now. Unfortunately, that was going to be a bit difficult. Also, if these weren't fighter jets, they were flying bombs. Unfortunately, that was going to be a bit difficult. As he watched, the 8 pilots who belonged to those fighter jets ran down from the bridge above. All of them had guns trained on Cap. Right as the first 2 troopers reached him, Captain America whipped around and slammed them both with a flying spin kick. They fell to the ground unconscious. Never mind the fact that they had guns. Another one came to him and Cap simply picked him up and threw him across the deck. Yes, we have guns. Notoriously short-range weapons.
This book messes up everything, not just the movie, but just everything.
This book fails logic. He hit the far wall with a thud. The 4th trooper got smashed in the face by Captain America's shield. Steve was holding his own, and then a huge pilot surprised him with a right hook. The punch sent Steve staggering backward onto one of the fighter jets. Inside, another pilot was sitting in the cockpit. He flicked a few switches and the jet burst to life. Another flick of the switch opened up the hatch, and before Steve could do anything, the pilot shot the plane forward, right into the open sky. As the air whistled around him, Steve clung to the jet's hood. Slowly, he crept forward, making his way toward the cockpit. But the pilot wasn't about to let that happen. He executed a series of barrel rolls. Steve's legs flew out.
Barrel roll. Do the barrel roll. Do the barrel roll. Do a barrel roll.
Steve's legs flew out behind him as he struggled to hold on. Then the pilot pushed down on the throttle and the plane nosedived. You don't push down the throttle to nosedive, you push down the yoke. Still, Steve hung on. When the plane righted itself, Steve pulled himself forward another few inches.
Road itself, god damn it.
Righted itself.
It's road itself.
Well, really?
Yes, that's the proper usage of that term.
How's
Righted
that?
is not righted is not a damn word.
No, righted. As in writing. It's,
Okay, never mind.
yeah.
Or even better, wrote itself.
R-I-G-H-T-E-D. That is a word.
Oh, okay. Hey, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Steve pulled himself forward another few inches. He was within reach of the cockpit, but to get to the pilot, he'd have to punch out the glass, and that meant letting go with one hand. No shit, Sherlock. Steve took a deep breath. Before the pilot could make another move, he reached back his hand and then smashed. He shattered the cockpit's glass, sending shards flying into the air. With one last pull, he made his way over the glass, and reached down, released the ejector seat. And reaching down, released the ejector seat. Okay, that made more sense. Letting out a cry, the pilot was launched into the sky. With no one to steer it, the plane began to dive again. Okay, I wouldn't think that would be how planes would work. Wouldn't it just go cruising the same way in a straight line? I don't know. Climbing over the window, Captain America got into the cockpit and quickly pulled back on the throttle. That's not what a throttle is for. A throttle controls the speed. When the plane was stabilized, he turned it around and flew back up towards Red Skull's giant plane of death. Dylan, any thoughts about the giant plane of death?
Besides the fact that it's all fucking stupid.
You fail at describing. This is like...
This is how I used to describe things back in my early days of fan fiction.
Elizabeth Rudnick was as bad at describing things as, like, whatever. During Steve's...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say my my written Naruto fan fiction that obviously ripped off from the Infamous games was less incoherent than this shit. Mind you, I was 13 at the time. Just, it is honestly frustrating.
During Steve's battle with the fighter jet, Red Skull had flown the huge plane hundreds of feet away, pressing the throttle forward as far as it could go. Oh my god, you're not even using it consistently. Steve raced after it. 100 feet, 75, 50. Captain America was closing in. When he was right at the hatch, he let up the lever, and the jet flew into the bigger plane's flight deck, landing with a flash of sparks and a shriek of brakes. Typically, you don't have brakes in a crash landing, but whatever. Finally, it came to a stop. He had made it. Still, the fight wasn't over. Up in the cockpit, Red Skull... Still, the fight wasn't over. Up in the cockpit, Red Skull was steering the plane closer and closer to America, despite the fact that we were in the fucking Alps. And if Captain America didn't stop him, he would destroy everything and everyone Cap had been fighting for. The American super soldier was battered and bruised and shaky, but he crawled out of the plane and stood up, his head held high against the evil Red Skull. Steve had no idea of knowing what was happening back at the Hydra base. He could only hope that his team, along with Peggy and Phillips, were in control and alive. He wished that he could talk to them, find out what was going on, and tell them that it would all be okay. But he couldn't. Not yet. Right now, he was going to get into that cockpit. And then he was going to take Schmidt down. He would figure out what was in that box Schmidt held so dear and destroy it. And then he would take the plane and all the bombs on it carried and destroy it too, no matter what the cost. Excuse me. The way you say that is as follows. Red Skull must be stopped, no matter the cost.
You got the touch.
You got the power.
Yeah!
A year ago, Steve Rogers was just an ordinary guy hoping to join the army. At least they acknowledged that some time had passed. Now, he was the courageous Captain America. People had given their lives to get him here, and he wouldn't let them down. Who Literally who? None of the Howling Commandos have died so far. Whatever the future held, he knew that he had to succeed. For Peggy and Bucky, for Erskine and Phillips, for the Howling Commandos, and most of all, for his country. Unmute your microphone, Dylan. I need you alive for this.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
With
he
heart.
He needs you alive so that there's someone who could actually, there's someone who you could who could hear, who could be heard by him.
I can hear
Okay.
you now. With heart, strength, and grim determination, Steve Rogers set off in the direction of the cockpit. It was time for the final confrontation. It was time for him to stop Johann Schmidt once and for all, no matter what the cost. It was time for Red Skull and all of Hydra to learn that evil would never prevail over justice, not while Captain America was there to save the day. The end.
And we don't even get the famous ending from the movie.
They don't even include that?
Nope.
What?
This is the last page of the book. Everything else is ads for other incomplete books.
Oh my god. It's like this author was given like the basic like rundown of like what the movie has and just kind of went from there.
Yeah, the way I described it was that she had the script described to her by somebody who vaguely he remembered reading it once.
Basically, or even better, she was secretly Paul Anderson in disguise.
Right.
And now allow me to show you something from the full color pictures from the movie.
Oh, lovely.
What's that? What's that?
Something that didn't have. I don't think that happened in the book.
That is a shot from Cap's final confrontation with the Red Skull aboard the Valkyrie.
Yep.
Something that didn't happen in this fucking book.
That's so fucking stupid.
Excuse me.
God.
Okay. So.
Final thoughts, gentlemen.
Fuck this book. Fuck this book. Just fuck it right up in the ass.
Hey,
Fuck.
hey, for 2021, could we roast the Injustice prequel comics?
Sure.
Ah. Yes.
Hey, I'm willing to provide the screen share for it since I have DC Universe.
We should get the original version before the recolor.
Yeah. And then
I
I
don't
can
know.
have another fucking conniption over the fact that Seawolf-class nuclear submarines don't carry nuclear missiles.
Okay, we'll save that for for that commentary. Until then, we're probably gonna end this off.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was a waste of 250.
Yes. Luckily, I wasn't here for most of it.
You have buyer's remorse.
Yes, I fucking do.
And meanwhile, I'm listening to our commentary from the Resident Evil Afterlife unofficial commentary.
So, any closing thoughts, any parting shots that you'd like to communicate, anything, any middle fingers that you would like to erect?
Wait. Hold
Already
on.
erected mine. Hold on a
Wait.
sec. Hold on a sec. I'm gonna
Okay.
throw my...
You see these?
Hold on. Okay.
Ha.
Hang on, let me get a screenshot here.
Did you get a screenshot?
Yeah, I got a screenshot.
Good.
Oh my god.
And I'm going to end the I'm going to end the video on that.
Okay.
That was just bad.
Okay, I'm not gonna end the video on that because it's gonna take too long. Anyways, any suggestions, comments? Is there anything you want to see?
Dylan, what do you suggest we roast? Oh, besides my suggestion.
I was.
Hell, we
I
could
think
probably roast Deceased.
Yeah. I think. I was gonna find maybe some bad Christmas fan fiction or something.
Okay.
Or hell, we could read chapter 2 of Amnesia.
Huh.
Dear God, please don't.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I will.
The sadistic bastard.
Oh.
aren't I?
Okay. There was this anime. It's not Christmas related, but there's this one thing I watched. It was an isekai anime, and it's so bad. Like my brother and I were watching it. We had to quit like 10 minutes into the show.
Hey, Alex,
Okay, yeah.
do you think for unofficial commentaries we could have Dylan on for one of them?
Sure.
Would you
If
like
Spabby's
to join us?
If Spabby's into it, we could get her on too.
Okay, so if we could get for this coming Saturday, after I get out of seeing Wonder Woman, and we're gonna be doing Batman versus Robin and 2 episodes from the Teen Titans animated series because
We're probably only going to be doing Batman and versus Robin, honestly.
2 episodes of Teen Titans only take like 22 minutes each.
Yeah, but then we also have to do the Christmas.
It's an hour and 20 minutes. It's an hour 20 minutes.
Oh, you know, I think Batman vs. Robin. I actually have that on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I have it on DVD.
Aha. Okay, how do you guys have these movies?
Dollar Tree.
It was a gift bought for me.
Dollar Tree gives you free movies.
Yeah, my sister got it for me. I think.
Your
Yeah.
sister is sadistic.
Well, I mean, I hadn't really watched any of the DC anime movies at the time.
Okay, so are we done with the stream now?
Yeah. Bye everybody. See you next week. Hopefully we'll have slightly less or slightly more of a dumpster fire for y'all.
Hippity hoppity! I want my life to stop it.
Any final comments, Kevin?
No.